My name is Luke Milam. I am the Director of New Creation Ministries and a 2010 graduate of Covington Theological Seminary. The video before this was talking about you and the Great Commission. And as we grow a little bit more, we're going to start working our way out all the way to reaching the world. And so today we are talking about the Great Commission and marriage. We cannot expect to fulfill the Great Commission in our churches if we are not fulfilling the Great Commission in our homes. I mean, God said man cannot live by himself, and so he created Eve. But we sit here and oftentimes as ministers, we come and we get so focused on our churches that we forget about the home. And I have had so many friends and so many people that I have heard about through the years get so caught up in ministry that they forget about their wives, and usually it ends up in them leaving the ministry, them getting divorced, coming off of the mission field, and so much more. We're willing to go at any hour of the night to visit somebody in a hospital, or we're willing to stay late hours at church counseling people. We're willing to go away for a week to speak at a conference, but we're not willing to put in the time and the effort with our spouses. It cripples our ministry. I was a director of a nonprofit outdoor adventure ministry for about 14 years. And during those 14 years, sometimes I would travel between 4 to 6 months out of the year, taking people on backpacking trips, survival trips, speaking at camps, all of these different things. And the ministry was growing and all of that, but at the same time, my family was suffering greatly. When we spend so much time focusing on doing discipleship through our ministries, we are educating our spouses, we are educating our families that discipleship happens outside of the home. When we're educating those people to do that, then what do they do inside the home? They do whatever they want. The discipleship is disconnected from the home. All those years that I was doing that outdoor ministry, I was not fulfilling the Great Commission, even though I was telling people about Jesus, even though I was doing all these conferences and different things. I was not fulfilling the Great Commission, because if I'm failing at home, then I'm failing everywhere. What marriage has taught me through the years, marriage helps us to fulfill the Great Commission. When I am able to disciple my spouse, my wife, and she knows all of my bad qualities, she knows everything about me. And so when I'm able to be discipled and disciple her, then that's authentic discipleship. Discipleship is messy. Discipleship is grimy. It is so easy to go to a conference or go to a church and speak on all these different things, because I don't really have the opportunity to get to know very many people very often. At the same time, when I am helping her grow and become what God wants her to be, that is authentic discipleship, and that puts me in a better position to really make disciples when I am speaking at these conferences. I'm learning how to be authentic. I'm learning how to be vulnerable. The majority of the audience here with Covington Theological Seminary is going to be people who are in ministry, being pastors, being missionaries. When you're doing these things, focus on your wife and be vulnerable. When you're vulnerable, you are admitting how much of a sinner that you are, how much you need God's grace, and that you're not trying to hide anything, but you want to forgive her and you want her to forgive you, and y'all want to work together to make each other the best possible Christians that you can possibly be. I want to touch on a few verses here. Matthew 22:37 through 40. And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." And so what I want to do is focus on two small things real quickly. The first is verse 39, where it says, and the second is like it. It doesn't say that the second is least important. It says the second is like it. So the first thing we're supposed to do is love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That if you love God, you're going to love people. If you love God, you can't exist. We are wired to love. The second thing I want to point out is the same thing in verse 39. A second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The Greek word for neighbor is plesion, and it means friend. It can mean everybody in the Jewish nation. It could also mean everybody in the world. And so in our context of this video, if you love God, you're going to love your wife. You're going to love your wife with everything that you have. I want y'all to listen to this because I have heard this so much. Luke, the church is my job. I could get fired if I don't make disciples at the church, even if I have to miss out on family time. Are you kidding me? That I have heard that from so many people. I mean, I want to explain what that sounds like because it is so outrageous that you could hear that. That number one, you're looking at your ministry, your call to God, your call to God as a job. Yes, and a worker is worthy of his hire, but how dare we get to the point that we think that our ministry is our job and we look at it as only that, and we are willing to sacrifice our families for that. We're willing to sacrifice our marriage for our church job. That is nuts. And on top of that, you're justifying everything that you're doing wrong and placing all of the blame on God. It infuriates me that we get to that point as ministers, and we really need to check ourselves if we're getting to that point. The second thing is what it sounds like, because I have worked at drug rehabs and working with motels where there's drug addicts and everything else there, is you sound like somebody trying to justify everything that they're doing or everything that has happened in their past. And that's the reason that they are taking meth. That's what you sound like when you say stuff like that. Well, I am doing this because God did this. God called me into the ministry and my family needs to sacrifice. God has not called you to sacrifice your marriage. So where do we end this? You probably need to take some kind of sabbatical if this is you. If you're not quite to that point and you say, Luke, I think if I can just get a few things right, I can turn this ball around because I want to fulfill the Great Commission. God has called me to help fulfill the Great Commission. And so what do you suggest that we do? Well, I've got three things. Number one, when you're talking to your wife, think before you speak. Are you speaking to her in a loving, kind way, lifting her up, growing her? Are you talking more harshly to her than you are your people that you're trying to disciple at your church or at your ministry? Number two, pray for your spouse. There is no substitute for this. Number three is serve your spouse. Wash dishes, make up the bed, vacuum, buy her flowers, take her on dates, all of these different things. Love your spouse. Don't serve your church more than you're serving your spouse. But if we, as ministers of the gospel, have a true desire to fulfill the Great Commission, it has to start with our marriage.